Alright, I'm going to attempt to make this video where I'm going to go through each question on your quiz and then allow you to watch it at your own on your own time so that you can make corrections on this quiz. So first thing is number one, write an equation of a parabola in vertex form that has this vertex and goes through that point. Okay, so we know that vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And so we know because the vertex is at 2, -12, we know that we can put in the 2 for h. That's going to be x minus 2 squared, and then minus 12, because the 12 is the k value. The h and the k is the vertex. So the only thing that we really need then is to figure out what a is, and that's where the other point comes in. So I'm going to plug in 6 for y, and I don't know what a is, but I know that the x is -1. So this is going to be -1 minus 2 squared minus 12. Well, -1 minus 2 is -3, and -3 squared is 9. So this is 9a minus 12 equals 6. And if I add 12 to both sides, then I'll get that 18 is equal to 9a. And if I divide both sides by 9, a is 2. So now I'm going to plug that in for this a right here, and my equation then is y equals 2, because that's my a value, times x minus 2 squared, and then minus 12. And that's the answer you should have for number 1. Let's go ahead and move up to number 2. Number 2 is kind of an interesting question because you can use a calculator for this. And boy, is that helpful. You can just plug list 1 could be your x values, 2, 1, and 4. List 2 can be 5, 3, and -3. You can go to stats, calculate, and go to a quadratic regression line, and it will tell you what the answer is. The other way that you can do this is, because it's standard form, we know that standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So what I'm going to do is go to each one of these points and plug these points into the equation. The first point, the y is 5, and that equals a times x squared. Well, x here is 4, or is 2, so 2 squared is going to be 4. So that's 4a. Plus b times 2, so that's 2b, plus c. That's the first point. Then if I go to the second point, the y value is 3, and that's going to be equal to a times 1 squared, which is just a, plus b times 1, which is just b, plus c. Then if I go to the last equation, -3 is the y value, and the a value is 4. Or the x value is 4, so it's going to be a times 4 squared. Well, that's 16a, plus b times x, well, that's 4 times b, plus c. And so now we have this system of equations. And so we're going to want to solve this system the easiest way possible, and probably the easiest way to do that is to get rid of the c. So if I call this equation 1, equation 2, and equation 3, the first thing I'm going to do is take equation 1 minus equation 2. So I'll have 5 minus 3, which is 2, 4a minus 1a, which is 3a, and then 2b minus b, which is just b, and then the c's are eliminated. So there's one equation with 2 variables. And I think the second thing I'm going to do is take equation 3 and then subtract equation 1. So I'm going to take -3 minus 5, which is -8. I'm going to take 16a minus 4a, which is 12a. 4b minus 2b, which is 2b. And the c's are eliminated. So now I have my 2 by 2 system of equations without a c value in it. So now I need to either eliminate the a's or the b's, and I think what I'm going to do is eliminate the b's. I'm going to take the top equation there and multiply it times -2. So I'll get -4 equals -6a minus 2b. And when I add these two equations together, that's going to be that -12 is equal to 12a and a -6a. Well, that's 6a. And then the b's are eliminated, which means A has to be -2 if I divide by 6. So there's my a value. Well, then I'm going to plug that a value into this equation to figure out what my b value is. And that equation then would look like this. I'll have 2 equals 3 times a. Well, that's 3 times -2, which is -6 plus b. So if I add 6 to both sides, b is 8. Then I'm going to plug both of those values, let's say, into the second equation here. And that would mean that I'll have 3 equals a, which is -2, plus b, which is 8, plus c. Well, -2 plus 8 is 6, and if I subtract 6 from both sides, then I'll have -3 is equal to c. Which means if I plug all of those into my original equation, my equation is going to be y equals -2, because that's the a value, x squared, plus 8x, because that's the b value, and then minus 3. So there's the second problem. Let's move on then. Let me first delete all this and move on to number 3. All right, so number 3, one of the best quarterbacks in Hillsdale College. This is actually a problem about another teacher at Homestead High School who was the quarterback at Hillsdale. So anyway, the initial velocity of 128 feet per second, that's the b value. Initial height is 6. That means he let go of the ball when it was 6 feet up in the air. And the -16 is the force of gravity. So that equation gives you the height of the ball at any moment in time. And it's going to look something like this. It's going to go up and it's going to come back down. Well, part A asks this question. How many seconds will it take for the ball to reach its highest point? Well, that's this point right here, which is the vertex. So you could do this on your calculator. You could plug that into your calculator, go down to second trace, and find a maximum point. Okay, it'd be left bound and right bound. The other way that you can find the maximum point is to find the vertex by using -b over 2a. So we're going to have b value is -128 over 2 times a. Well, 2 times -16 is -32, and that comes out to be exactly 4 seconds. Okay, now some of you had 3.99 seconds, and that's because your calculator sometimes it goes back and forth a certain number of times and it doesn't hit it on the exact correct point, but it would be exactly 4 seconds. So then the question is, well, how high will the ball be at that time? So in 4 seconds, we're just going to plug 4 into this equation for the x value. So x squared, that's 4 squared, that's 16. -16 times 16, I think is, I don't know what that is. Let me grab my calculator here. I don't have my calculator. I'll use the one on my watch. I think it's let's see, 16. Trying to do this without the use of my calculator here at all. That's 256. So that's going to be -256. And then plus 128 times 4. Well, that's going to be double 256. So when I add those together, it's going to be 256 plus 6, which is exactly 262 feet high. And that's the maximum point. So that is number 3. And so let's move on to 4, 5, and 6. So these questions, you cannot solve those. So there are some of us who solve these equations, but there's no equal sign. So x can't be anything. This is just an expression. It's like saying, what is x plus b, or x plus 2, solve that. Well, x plus 2, I mean, x could be anything because there's no equal sign there. We can't say x is 5 because we don't know what x plus 2 is equal to. So we can't solve this. The only thing we can do is factor this. And so the first one, I'm going to take x times x because x times x gives me x squared. And then I want to find something that multiplies together to give me -16, but adds to +6, and that's going to be +8 and a -2. So then the middle terms, this is going to be 8x minus 2x, which does give me 6x. So that's it. Number 5, I'm going to factor this. I'm going to have to put a 2x in an x because that's the only thing that gives me 2x squared. And then here and here I want to put something that multiplies together to give me negative 35. And let's try positive 5 and negative 7. And then this is 5x minus 14x, and 5x minus 14x does give me negative 9x. So that's factoring 2x plus 5 times x minus 7. And then finally number 6, a lot of us just solve this as if it was equal to 0, but we don't know what it's equal to. We just want to factor this expression, and so 4x times 4x gives me 16x squared, and if I make this a positive 5 and a negative 5, they multiply together to give me negative 25, but then there is no middle term because 20x minus 20x is nothing, and there is no middle term there. So that is 4, 5, and 6. Let's turn it over, go to the next page. Now here, we're actually starting to solve equations. And you can see they're equal to something, so they can be solved. And so we just have to remember to put our answer in simplest radical form. If we're square rooting and it looks like 3 of these equations, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. And so for number 7, the first thing I would do is add 10 to both sides. So that's going to give me 1/5 x squared equals 10. If I multiply both sides by 5, then I'll have x squared equals 50. So then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I'll have x is equal to, it's going to be plus or minus the square root of whatever 50 is. Well, square root of 50 can be like 25 times 2. And square root of 25 is 5, and the square root of 2 I don't know, so it's just going to be plus or minus 5 radical 2. Number 8, we use square rooting for number 7, but for number 8 we cannot use square rooting because there's an x squared and an x, which means for this problem it looks like we're going to have to factor it. So let's see, and actually maybe before we factor that, that way maybe we can factor a 3 out of the whole thing. And so this might make it a little bit easier. So 3 goes into 6, it goes into 3, and it goes into 45. So if I just factor out a 3, this is going to be 2x squared minus x minus 15 equals 0. So then I'm going to factor the factor. So I know that 2x times x gives me 2x squared. And let's see, if I put a 5 here and a 3 here, and I make this one negative and this one positive, then I'm going to have 5x minus 6x, which is negative x. So if these 3 factors multiply together to give me 0, one of them has to be 0. Either the 2x plus 5 is equal to 0, or the x minus 3 is equal to 0. And if it's 2x plus 5 equals 0, I would subtract 5 and divide by 2, which means x is going to be negative 5 halves. And the second one, I would add 3 to both sides, so x is 3. So my two solutions are negative 5 halves and 3. Now also, you had a calculator for this one, so you could just graph that on your graphing calculator, and it would hit the 0, it would hit y equals 0, or the x-axis at those 2 spots, at negative 2.5 and 3. And it would look something like this. And you could find that using that method as well. All right. So let's move, let me clear this and scroll this up so we can do 9 and 10. So both of these questions don't have an x value. So we can do both of them by square rooting. First thing I'm going to do for number 9 is subtract 100 from both sides. So I'd have 3x squared equals negative 96. Then I'm going to divide by 3. So x squared is going to equal negative, let's see, that's going to be 32. And so then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And so I'll have x equals, it's going to be plus or minus whatever the square root of negative 32 is. So negative 32 is the same thing as 16 times 2 times negative 1. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of negative 1 is I. And the square root of 2 I don't know. So that's going to be plus or minus 4i radical 2. A lot of us forgot the plus or minus sign there, so which was our only mistake. All right, let's take a look at number 10.